Monday, February 10th, 2020, and the time is 3:45. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Schreinerfeld.
Here.
Constance Zaretta.
Here.
Mike Manzico.
Here.
Eileen Bailey.
Here.
Mark Stein.
Here.
Lois Stewart. Aaron Stone.
Here. I seek a motion to approve the January 13th, 2020 Committee of the Whole minutes. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the January 13, 2020 Committee of the Whole minutes.
May I have a second? Second. The motion has been made and seconded. Board members, are there any comments, errors, or omissions to the minutes?
I didn't say
Right? All those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay.
The motion carries by general consent. Since Mr. Neuweiler is not here, let's start with financial metrics and dashboard. We have strategy, nope,
That's me.
yeah, so I turn the meeting over to John Cesaretti.
Thank you, President Bates. So, financial metrics and dashboard. I'm going to turn it over to Ellen.
So, as you know, we recently completed the expenditure process, review process that we began in fiscal year 17-18, concluded that the district is being managed in a fiscally responsible manner. Then we focused on selected metrics and benchmarking against other districts. Actually, should we switch to
I think we can go through that. I was just saying, I think we can go through this and then we'll switch back to the construction. Is this
just, yes. Okay, so we focused on metrics and benchmarking and put together a new financial dashboard via Forecast 5 that incorporates a wide variety of the metrics and benchmarking that we've reviewed over the past year. There are 2 interactive dashboards on the website. One is for operating expenditures and one's for operating revenues. And we believe the combination, and then there's several static dashboards as well. And we have a handout of just a list of what those dashboards are. We believe the combination of the interactive and static dashboard metrics will improve transparency and communicate our financial status in a more meaningful way to our community members. So we recommend making this dashboard information available and live on our District 39 website. And then next fiscal year, we will review the metrics to see if we should make any modifications and continue to review it on an annual basis so we can just have continuous improvement of our communications and our financial status. Does anybody have any questions?
I looked at it. I thought it looked really good. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and it's very logical. Sort of our old peers and our new peers. So, thank you. It's good.
Alright.
That's it.
So then we'll go ahead and make that live tomorrow, or as
Oh,
soon
that's
as,
exciting.
push those buttons, and then just on a regular basis, we recommend the board review that with us. If
Okay.
there's additional metrics that we want to consider folding into that,
Yeah.
we certainly can look at that, and as we continue this Forecast 5, we may find some other metrics that we think are useful, and we'll bring those forward to the board as we engage in that continuous improvement. So thanks for all your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Given that Mr. Neuweiler is not here, I will just run down these agenda items, and be interim committee chair. So should we start with, central construction project bids?
Yeah, I'll start out with the summary for that. On February 4th, we had the bid opening for the central construction bids. In January, just as a reminder, we shared that the all-in cost bid estimate was $2,426,000, which included all the construction management and architect fees. And we are happy to report that the bids came in well under budget. So we are recommending we accept the alternate to add unit vents to the 2 classrooms so that all 4 kindergarten classrooms at Central will have air conditioning. And we also recommend accepting the alternate to add LED lighting to the 4 kindergarten classrooms as well. Even with the acceptance of these alternates, we're still coming in $236,000 under the estimate provided in January, and the all-in cost with construction management and the architect fees is $2,189,000. So we'll be bringing that to the board for approval at the February board meeting. Did you want to say anything else about the bid, Steve?
It's hard to follow that, but
Yeah.
really good news.
Good news.
I would tell you that we got really good coverage on all the bid packages. Nearly every construction company that picked up documents responded, so we were very encouraged to see that. They're all companies that we're familiar with and that the district is familiar with, so we're comfortable that way. The bids were grouped pretty tightly, meaning the low bidder and bidder number 2 and 3 were pretty close, and what that tells me is we had good documents from the architects and engineers, and that everybody played to win. That's a dollar.
Good work.
And everybody played to win. They really did want your work.
Good.
So I think that was really good. And I've said this to the board before, and I'll say it again. Your good owners, contractors want to be here. Stan and his staff, your school staff, Ellen and the business office staff do a really good job. And this is how you tell. People bid and they come back with good numbers. So it's a good story. So thanks for trusting us, and we're ready to get going whenever you're ready to tell us.
Thank you.
Board members, any comments, questions? It's good that we don't have that hardship markup from the contractors. All right, next we'll go on to Highcrest Garden Project with the Lakota Group.
So we have the Lakota group here today. They're going to provide a presentation of our Highcrest garden planning process with some of the pictures of the design ideas that were generated. And then after they impress you with all that, we'll talk a little bit about costs.
Oh, why?
As they're getting set up, I will just mention, I think the process has been really impressive, and our administrative team who worked with the Lakota group really appreciated the approach that you used, and the gathering of input and feedback has been really powerful as we create this new space for students. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really been helpful to guide us in this project. We never want to come into a community and say, this is, what we think from an outsider perspective. It's always good to get the input first before we take those first steps.
I'm Deb Salmon. This is Tom Barton. He's been working on this closely with Kevin Clark, probably for the past 3 or 4 months, with students and teachers and administrators, and I've been working behind the scenes. So I'm happy to be here today, and we're happy to kind of talk about this and move toward next steps of the project.
So as you hinted at, we started this process by having a survey out to Highcrest Middle School, and really wanted to get as much feedback from the students as possible. And we had various questions like what their favorite classes are, and to surprise math and science.
Way to go.
We had well over 500 responses, which is an incredible amount. It's more than a lot of our surveys for projects, so it's definitely an enthusiastic bunch. And so the bulk of the survey focused on various images that we had students rate from 1 to 5 stars. And these categories ranged from landscapes, elements, and activities. And just to give you a really quick idea of some of the top vote getters from each category, they really liked this image of a colorful wall and planter, and there's a smaller and larger image of what that looked like. A treehouse reading nook really scored well. They liked the idea of having an outdoor art class. Seating and climbing boulders also hold very well, as well as green wall and large board games. So there are all sorts of like very whimsical elements that kids responded well to and thought could be fitted into the space nicely. So we moved forward with 3 different concepts with various combinations of these pieces, and what we've landed on was one that pulled in this colorful wall concept. And to give you a quick overview of what this concept is, you can see this sinuous wall that falls within the courtyard, and as you may well know, the concrete was already out there, so this is kind of moving in conjunction with the concrete that was already in place, and it's working with the planter area. And the whole idea is that we would use subtle landforms, little mounds, and cut into it, as you can see in this section. And that would have areas for kids to be able to sit, areas for planting boxes to be fitted throughout. So it really gives kids chances to sit amongst trees and nature and read their books and hang out with their classmates. And in different areas throughout the courtyard, we see the opportunity for these reading nooks that the kids really responded well to. And you can see in this image, the way that we picture this is it would be this whimsical wooden sculpture that would sit amongst the trees, and you could have books in there, and it could be a space for kids to be able to get away from everything else and read and interact with nature. Moving along, we see there being an opportunity in this large paving area for a wooden stage, and it wouldn't necessarily be much more than just a little platform for teachers to potentially go out there and give little classes, or if there's an event that happens in the library or technology center, things can kind of spill out there and become more of a formal space. And fitted around that would be these little wooden bench area seats that kids can move around and fit together and congregate as they see fit. So lesson plans can happen in that space, as well as just quiet moments. Another thing that scored well was these large board games, and so we see this as potentially the opportunity for learning. So you would have games like chess, Mancala, Chinese checkers, and we see that could happen underneath this pergola that exists out there today. And we also think another option would be for that to be a study area where you've got partitions and potentially a chalkboard or an area for pinups for art classes or things of that nature. So this could be its own separate area for kids to learn in a different respect. And just to go through a couple more pieces, this corridor up here doesn't really get a lot of light. It doesn't really have the opportunity for a lot of plants to succeed. So we thought one way to utilize this very blank wall that teachers apparently are having a hard time looking at outside of their classroom is having rain chains that would convey the rainwater down from the roof into various areas. And you could maybe use the rainwater for other areas to water, or it could just be this ornamental element. And finally, we've got a green wall that would be happening on this space. And we understand that there's not a lot of sunlight that gets into this space, so we figured that potentially what could be done there is this modular format where kids can, in their own class, grow a plant and in the springtime place it in these little slots, as this picture shows, and they can create kind of this organic mural every single year. And it would reduce maintenance, but it would also be a fun learning opportunity for them. So that's a really quick overview. Open to any questions, comments.
Board members, are there any questions or how about reactions?
Okay, so
That's pretty neat.
Thumbs up.
I'm like surprisingly not emotional. I was the outdoor classroom chair 5 years ago, and and I was the one digging through the recycling bins to find paper for them to paint on and spending the budget on board games. And the outdoor classroom is really important because at Highcrest you're either in or you're out. It's not the other places where you're kind of going by. You have to choose to go there, or you choose to go outside on the playground. And most kids go out on the playground, but there's a section of kids that this resonates with. And so your ideas for what they can do to recharge during the day, I'm really excited. I'm really happy.
Yeah.
It's yes. That's so exciting.
Great.
I'm sure you did, but it's part of your scope looking at drainage and like rainwater movement, so it's not like puddles and muddy and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, we try to work around the existing area drains in the courtyard the best that we can, but it's very schematic at this point, and as we move forward, we would accommodate those to the best of our abilities. But there's no major features that are in the way of where those area drains are now.
So what's the capacity of that design? Like how many kids could be out there?
I suppose it's hard to say. You'd probably be able to accommodate 50 kids, in various spaces throughout the courtyard. It's hard to say though. I think you could easily have a class here if you get enough of these movable benches together, and you could have 10, 12 kids spending time in this corner, and various numbers of kids sitting along that metal bench. So you could make it as crowded as you'd like, but I'd say 50 is a fair
That's a good
number.
number.
We were looking at this to be like, pretty.
Seems like a lot.
This is pretty flexible.
Right.
There's a lot of flex space in here, so you can have, bigger outdoor classes or smaller. And then this spine in here is more about like small gathering, 2 or 3 or 4 kids, and then these could even be just with 2 kids or just, someone by themselves. So I think they're nested, different levels of interaction that are built into this, especially how this piece gets used, and it can, morph over time as you, see what opportunities you have for using it. This too is kind of with these partitions, we were thinking that they could be on wheels and they could be, move around so that you can use that space either as one big space or as several smaller spaces.
Thank
So I
you.
have 2 questions. The first is that you did a great job getting kid input. That's awesome. Did you get any adult input? I know that we have this whole community of folks who are really into the gardens. And then the second question is, it sounds like the wall, I missed it. Is the wall staying or going? Because it sounds like the teachers don't like the wall.
So as far as the first question goes, we have met twice now with a group of teachers at Highcrest Middle School.
Ellen was at one of those meetings. I am actually going to interject. I'm so sorry for being late, first of all, but I wanted to tell you, I met with them, with teachers and members of the gardening committee, administration, and the presentation was fantastic, and they had multiple versions, and kind of morphed, I think, ideas that worked and didn't work, and were so responsive. I just have to compliment you on how responsive you were to what everyone had to say and the input of the people that were present when I was there. But yeah, they first, listened to the kids and listened then to the teachers' concerns about safety and about inclusion and about adaptability, usability of the space, making sure that, the larger spaces, that teachers could actually bring classes out there and have places to sit and write. So things like that. So I was really impressed, and I hope that answered your question, but I'm just so impressed. I wanted to tell you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we met with a group of teachers before we had even done any design work or even sent out a survey just to talk about the space and get input as to how it's being used now. But in regards to the wall, I'm not sure.
Do you mean the wall that's
Yeah,
It's a part of the new
That's part of the
structure.
building.
Yeah.
You take
Yeah.
that down, I think you've got an open air maker space.
So part of
It's a good thing you're part of the architectural team and not me.
Yeah.
Wall
not
schmaltz.
not a happy wall, but
It's also a firewall.
yeah, it's a firewall
Yeah.
also. So
Okay, I didn't
we
understand.
thought about putting
Okay.
holes in it and things, but because it's so close, we couldn't do that, and so it's kind of.
I knew I was missing some understanding.
And I think
And are you referring
that
to
actually.
No,
No,
the
it's a
orange
brick
wall.
The one that Tom said was that
Oh.
The eyesore of the
teachers
teacher.
didn't like here. Well,
Yeah.
that's.
There's a classroom window that looks right out on it, but I
Right,
think
yeah.
Tom's idea of having the rain chains, and what I don't think you mentioned is the sculptural elements you can add into the rain chains, so it could be almost an artistic
Yeah.
installation
It doesn't
of
have
that.
to just look like
Nice if
chain
they
link.
could
It can
decorate it
be in
somehow.
any sort of form that just conveys the water down from the roof. There's so many different options and materials and colors that you can use.
And isn't the facing wall a place you were discussing a possible installation, like a beautiful student design?
Yeah. So one of the things that we were looking at, and there's so many different walls and surfaces throughout the space that can be used for murals, that can be used for chalkboards or message walls or these rain chains. We think maybe if you've got games going on here, you could create a makeshift abacus where kids are, counting the scores of various games. So there's lots of different things that you can put on the walls and involve kids with.
Okay.
Yeah, so where would the community gardeners garden in that design? Or is it
So-
all pre-planted?
That's our phase 3.
Oh,
so
all right.
this is the phase 2, and then we're actually going to be meeting in a couple weeks with we shared this with some of our community as well beyond the meeting that Ellen was at, and so then we started the discussion of phase 3 and looking at spaces outside of the school walls and identifying some of those.
Oh, okay. So that's the plan, to be outside, not inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then it's accessible all year round too.
Okay.
What's the timeline on this as far as?
Well, so, like I said, we need to talk about the cost. And again, this is kind of, like usually when we're looking at the buildings and STR comes in and does like the preliminary, design, a lot of this stuff can still be tweaked and the actual designs finalized. We also think probably there's definitely gonna need to be a phase-in of the process because it is beautiful but also costly.
Yeah.
But I guess we can walk through the cost, which kind of ties into the phases, but do you have any questions regarding from the Lakota group on the design or anything, or you want me to talk about the cost?
I just did a quick one just to get a better feel for it. The curved metal bench and planters.
Yeah.
What do those look like? I mean, is that those?
Maybe. So this is the image that we had shown students before, and it doesn't necessarily have to be metal. We've already started to have some internal conversations about materiality and how we can potentially reduce the cost on fabrication and customizing a piece like that. But the whole idea is that it doesn't have to be red either. It's a colorful piece that just weaves throughout the landscape, and the face of it is colorful, and it can bend to create seating areas or be fabricated in a certain way so that there's planters that are integrated into it.
So this, I think, has a quantity of 200. And you're talking about maybe 50 kids at a time. I mean, am I missing how those would be used?
Yeah, I think that's just the lineal footage. The cost of it is, for lineal foot.
I was raising my hand, if I could.
Yes, Don.
What are you gonna say? Oh, so I'm known for my obnoxious questions, so no offense. But is that paved, like with pavers? The
inside of it?
Yeah.
We think that it could be bark mulch. We think that it could be
oh no, the stuff that's already concrete. What is
this?
The white stuff?
This is concrete that exists out here today.
Okay.
You've seen that.
I had visions of bricks with people's names on it.
So we had to do, and Colby could talk to it more, but as part of the first phase and doing the learning commons, there were some restrictions regarding the surfaces and what we could do to kind of stay under certain construction requirements with the MWRD, and so we decided to do the concrete to get us where we needed to go for learning commons, knowing that this phase was going to come after that, so it's just kind of how we had to phase it, but we didn't add to that.
Could we put bricks there instead of concrete?
So that was our initial thought.
Yeah.
The civil engineer was saying that, we're up against a kind of, when we disturb the land, we have to provide stormwater.
Yeah.
And he says there's a little kink in the regulations that say if you replace paving in kind, it doesn't count toward disturbing.
Yeah.
If you change it, then it does. So it was concrete, so he said it had to be concrete. So, and we're going like, well, permeable pavers don't work
Yeah.
there, and he's
Right.
going, but it still counts toward the thing, and we're right at the threshold of when we would have to start providing on-site storage for.
Well, I think where John is going. I think where
I don't
John
know.
is going
You know, if I
is
go like this,
Raising money.
he's going to the next question about cost, and there might be somewhere else where bricks could be that have people stand on it.
We're on top of
And
the
I-
concrete. Sorry, Alan.
I wanted to add something,
Yeah.
just because there was comments and they were really, really good comments. I thought I would share with you from some of the, I don't know if it was the teachers or who made the comments.
Yeah.
But, and I'm not necessarily advocating for the cost of it, but two people said something. One is that the new Learning Commons, and this goes to all of you designers, that it basically changed, it made Highcrest suddenly this whole new, this old building, it turned it into this sudden, like, flash into the future. Now we have this beautiful Learning Commons that's like futuristic. It's modern and it's bold, and this space is a part of it. And the people that were looking at your designs chose that feature as this feature that really pulled it all together. That winding, very modern, element instead of kind of the old like treehouse feel. So I just thought I would mention that to everybody. Now, I understand that feature, to really maintain it and do it right, when you're talking that feature in metal, it's powder coated to really last. A powder coated metal feature like that, like then it would last for a really long time. If you paint it and it's a wood, whatever, then it needs a lot of maintenance. So, but the cost, as you can see, is like immense. So, I would love to see like some way we can compromise or whatever, but and maintain that look, because that look I think was the key.
Yeah, so I agree, it's a beautiful design, but I hear benches, people sell benches,
Yeah.
who writes the benches, I've bought a bench before, and that's another.
Helpful, very helpful.
Every linear foot, I
Yeah,
think every
it's
foot
all
you
good.
can sell,
It's all good.
put a little plaque on it, and
Name tags.
you know.
But ultimately, I mean, really, Colby, this is as we go through this, because we're obviously still at the beginning. That's a great thing to keep. I agree
Yeah.
with John. It's a great thing to
I
keep
agree
in
too.
mind. Little
Yeah.
things to help
Yeah.
funding is terrific.
Erin?
Yes, building on what I was saying before, so the whole village merges at grade 5. And having been there for a year, a lot of the kids coming out there at recess are the kids who don't have a crew and they feel lost. So if we're gonna X stuff or decide prioritize things, I think the things that help build community amongst the kids are things that are my top priority. I mean, it's not just an outdoor classroom during the school day, it's a place where kids find each other and find solace at recess.
So I'm still stuck on does it make sense that we have to cement over when we could use permeable pavers?
This
already
is
there.
here.
Maybe we should do what's
This is
sensible.
existing.
Yeah.
And so that was our
They-
challenge to, incorporate what we've done with this existing. So everything that you see crosshatched in this beige tone, it's already there.
Yeah, so that
So
was built
you don't
with
have to pay
the
for it as
new
part of this
wood.
project.
Right, I was just like, if we had the moment, it would be better for the environment to have the permeable pavers.
Yeah.
Better for the environment too.
Oh, nicely done, Karen.
That's pretty good.
That's why she's super.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. All right.
Are there any other questions before I think we?
I guess
Well, I think we have
Everyone's gonna review the
finances.
cost.
That's what I was gonna say.
We have to make some
Go over the
decisions.
I
cost.
have one more quick one.
Yes.
From a
How to pay for
maintainability
it.
standpoint, what would be like the ongoing yearly, what kind of things would have to be done to keep it looking nice like this?
I think in terms of plantings, we would make sure that the plants chosen were of lower maintenance. There's no such thing as no maintenance. So if there's going to be any sort of elements that have wood or have plants, it's going to require maintenance. But as you were saying, a powder coated metal is something that can last in
That's
outdoors quite a bit better than something that is painted wood or. But yeah, there will be maintenance no matter which direction you go in. And that's just kind of the reality of having nicer things.
But I also have to mention the plantings and the comment by the gardening committee and the restrictions about what has to be there in order to plant vegetables. There has to be wood.
Yeah, vegetables have to.
I mean, I don't know
there's
where they're
certain
gonna plant,
restrictions, right.
but I thought I'd mention that too. That's equally important that
Yeah.
we make sure that they have their area that that we planned
Right.
it out. So
Right.
that was
And we haven't gotten into the nitty gritty of the
Yes.
actual plantings, but that's
Yeah.
something that we talked about also is, we're generating ideas for student teams to help do some of the maintenance. And I think PTO is part of the reason we are keeping them in the loop is because they have a committee that is primed and ready to help out with some of that maintenance as well. So we want it to be low maintenance, but also have an opportunity for the kids to get involved and engaged in the area and keep it up.
Yeah.
So take some pride in it.
Yeah, and we talked at the last time we met about potentially having some sort of chest out there or a place for the games to be stowed away or certain locations for these movable elements like the partitions or the chairs to be put in an area where they're not going to weather quite as bad. So we want to make sure that if you do invest in things like this, that they're going to be able to take care of it. Yeah.
Okay. Ellen.
Which,
A little bit loud.
Thank you.
no, we do have a plan, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what we've kind of laid out, again, these are high level estimates at this point of the different features. And again, this is kind of like the first pass of the design. As we get in and focus in on features, there might be ways to make certain aspects cheaper or designed a little bit differently. What we laid out in the column to the right of the yellow line is what we would recommend doing in fiscal year 1920. This definitely would have to be something that we would phase in over time just so we can fit it into our budget and our projections. But the stuff at the top is the removal, site preparation, some surfacing and mulching, and some of the initial planting we would recommend doing in fiscal year 1920 to start getting that ready in the springtime. And then we would recommend doing maybe half of the curved metal bench and planters to have some space to sit, as well as the pavement marking for the games, and the wood amphitheater, which we feel would be beneficial for bringing out the larger groups with the teacher. So if you add all that up in the first column, that is coming in at $76,000, which is over what we initially had in the budget, but we have some room now given where we've come out on the Harper and the Highcrest Phase 2. We did use all the contingency that was in there, and the Central, as you heard earlier, is coming in under budget as well. And we feel like that would be something that we could fit into our budget for this year to get started on. And then we would need to talk about on the rest of the items how we would go about funding those. I think there might be potentially some opportunities in the PTA or maybe the foundation or raising some money from selling benches or whatever it is. So the stuff in the TBD column are items that we would want to look at and do more research on and figure out where we could get the funding and then come up with a timeline of which items we want to implement. The last items and the not recommending are items we don't really think are necessary, and so we're putting those aside for now, which was the outdoor library and the mural, because there's plenty of other options to meet those needs at the school. So that's kind of where we're at.
what was the original budget for
So
the
originally we had $50,000 in
Oh.
here, and we have spent about half of that for the contract for the Lakota group. We
Okay.
haven't spent it all already, but we've allocated that for doing all the design process.
Okay.
So about 25,000 for that original 50 is still allocated there, but we kind of knew there would probably be some contingencies on some of the construction projects.
Yeah.
And those are panning out to our favor, which is good.
That's good.
Sorry, so our original, is the 50,000 number and the 200,000 number, are those comparable numbers or are they totally different numbers? The 200,000 at the bottom right.
Oh, so the 200,000 is Lakota's estimate. If we did everything that was on the page, it would be $200,000. The first column, what we're reckoning to do in fiscal year 1920 is $76,000, and we had budgeted $50,000. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
So
his
it's just the
question-
first,
I
it's
think
the
his
first
question
year.
was the 25 that
76.
that we paid to Lakota is not part of this 200.
Right, so that's separate, yes.
That was your question.
No, that was,
Okay.
that's a good question, but it wasn't the
Okay.
question. I think the answer to my question is we budgeted 50,000 for this year and we're looking at 76,000.
Versus like the 25 that's still left that we didn't spend on Lakota.
And then did we ever do any budget for the sort of rest of this? I understand the 9.9 thousand is not recommended, but whatever, that's in the rounding for this, for my purposes. Did we ever have a estimate that would be comparable to the 200,000?
No, because before we
Okay.
started the process, we didn't really have any feel for what was the potential or what we would want to do out there. And so it wasn't until we kind of went through this process with the Lakota group that they could identify what some possible solutions were to meet the needs for the students. So we hadn't gotten to that point yet.
Does this affect in any, I'm so sorry, does this affect in any way our budget for the farm and the other piece of the outdoor garden project, which is outside of the school?
So we hadn't planned on doing anything in fiscal year 1920 with that phase. What we had talked about was researching that next phase this year and potentially putting money into next year's budget for that. Again, we hadn't come up with a number yet, and we're still trying to talk about what that might be there. Again, as we're getting into the budget, like now's the time to talk about it because we're starting the budget process for next year.
Because, I mean, we're putting so much off into be determined for this part of the project, and then we have that whole other part that we've talked about, and we didn't promise, but we basically promised
We did-
that it's gonna happen, I
Well,
mean,
so we did talk with our community members that about that external place, and we talked a little bit about the main part of that they envisioned is the prepping of the soil, kind of in the area that we had identified for that up towards that south parking lot there. On the other side of the school. And so their perspective on that is once we have the soil prepped, that they would be able to bring in volunteers to do some of the planting in there like we did with the previous prairie garden. So I think the cost would be significantly less for something external like that.
but are we gonna be able to help them recoup the loss of those plants that we had to destroy?
I think it would be similar plantings as what they had
Okay.
already identified, so yeah, and there are some plants that we have worked with Lakota too that include some of the native prairie plants that were in the garden to begin with, so that's still TBD on our
Okay, cool.
so, yep.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
I would love to hear from groups who are willing to come in and help out. I think it would be really helpful for me personally to make sure that we have groups telling us, yeah, we're excited about doing this work. Because sometimes we get caught in sort of a miscommunication, and we get some people interpreting the way we're doing things as not caring about the gardens and whatnot. So it would be great to hear sort of directly from people who say, yep, we're raising our hands, we're excited.
Yeah, John.
Excellent budget. So if I understand this right, the kind of the minimum ask to make the garden habitable is 31,000 in the first year. Do I have that base concept subtotal?
Yeah, just to do the site prep and the hardscape and the planting, if we just put that in, that's a 31,000. That assumes we do half of the planting in 1920, the other 14,000 in the fall.
Okay.
Part of that also is because we discussed having the construction at the building being totally shut
Get it
down. It's
done,
not accessible in the summer.
Yeah.
So any sort of maintenance that we put in, we want to make sure that we can, or any sort of plants we put in, we want to maintain. So putting them in the spring and then closing down the building doesn't work for that.
Yeah.
So they actually recommended the fall
for some of them.
Okay. Yeah, I guess what my where I'm going with this is so that probably has to be done. The 31,000, the base concept stuff.
So you would definitely start with that. Would be your start. That would be the first thing you would need to do if you're going through the process.
And then the stuff below it, the preferred concept, value-added features, is we'd sure like to do that piece.
Those are the things that I think the students and staff and those committee members who looked at it are pretty excited about.
Okay.
And our vision for that, I think, is that we get it started, and that is really doing the first two columns really gives us a good, strong, this is our garden. And then anything beyond that third column, which totals up to about $100,000, as it's written here, are enhancements. And so that's where we would be looking for some additional opportunities, maybe fundraising or donations to help cover the cost of some of those. I think the wood reading hut is something that I'm particularly attracted to, but I know a lot of people have really, it's resonated with a lot of people, and so we're hoping that we might be able to get some support for accomplishing some of those other features, recognizing that that first column is really what gives us the base of this is the garden.
Yeah. I have to say one more thing, I'm sorry. I think there might be an issue with perception of this. I mean, this is a really cool garden. I love this a lot. But I was thinking about some of the discussions around playgrounds and outdoor expenditures, and how we're limiting those and have historically limited those expenses to what the PTO pays for. And now we're not. Right? This is. What are we thinking, I guess, as far as, maybe I should ask instead of tell. So what are we thinking as far as where the cost of the first year should come from, the $76,000? Was this going to come out of our budget, or were you thinking the whole thing? Okay.
Yeah, that we are envisioning that first year to come out of our budget.
Okay.
Earmarking. I know last year the board had a lot of discussion around that $50,000, and I heard Ray say a couple of times, if that's not enough, we'll increase that budget. Not to go historical, but I think that gives us that good base of what the garden space should be.
Right.
We see as a little bit different than playgrounds because it really is an internal, external space.
Yeah.
That I think we believe to be our responsibility to give us that good baseline of where we're at, considering the expansion of the learning commons into the courtyard. Again, some of those enhancements in that third column that are kind of costed out in the third column, we think are really cool, and we'd love to see as part of the space, but we see that as a little further down the road, and maybe pending some additional identification of funding. So those are the opportunities where the PTA or other parents may be able to contribute a little bit more.
Yeah, that's what I would. I'm
It's
sorry.
not the High Crest Playground. It's, so the.
No, I know. I had to raise it though, because I think it's
I'm
gonna
not
come
arguing.
up.
I'm just saying that it's not the playground, and also we earmarked money to all of the gardens of all of the schools.
Yeah.
As well. So
Okay.
so we had planned this, and on top of that, this year we gave more money to a gardening budget for all of the schools on for maintenance of. So this is like a beginning again.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that comment.
I mean, it's just like, wait.
I love it. I want the whole thing.
I know, I do too.
I think that it could be paid for maybe by concerned parents who want to buy bricks.
Or benches.
Or benches. Or both.
Or wood reading hut.
There you go.
No.
Sorry.
Oh, Frank and
Lisa.
Who was first?
So, two things. I think what's different about this too is we did tear it up.
Oh yeah, there's that.
And so we have to put it back. And so I think that, I'm just wondering, if we're putting it back just on this column, is the garden depressing, or are we gonna walk in and still feel like it's exciting? Without the extra pieces? It's a direct question.
I think it will be very useful. I don't think it will be quite as exciting as once the reading hut is there.
We got it first.
No pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Okay, how long
Kelly
will it
expressed some confidence that we may be able to get some donations.
I think I haven't approached anybody at this point yet, just because I wanted to have this conversation first, but, I think our PTO is really excited about this space too, and, there may be ways that we can do some fundraising or receive, gifts or whatever, so.
Frank.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm not sure if I'm confused or just a conversation, but I'm not against it. I just wanna make sure that we baseline, everybody's saying the same thing. We've already spent $25,000 out of the $50,000. So this is $50,000 more than we originally budgeted. Okay, that I just wanted to be on the same page on that. So this is 50,000 more, double, whatever, but I mean, there's reasons for it, but I just wanted to be saying the same words.
Correct.
Okay.
And I wanted to say, I am all for pushing to, like, have some kind of immediate, like, fundraiser, or put it out there, you know, to fill this space as quickly as possible with either benches that were donated by this family or whatever. You know, I know you're stuck on pavers, but since we can't change the ground, there's other things. People like to have their names on benches, people like to have their names on wood reading huts. A plaque on a wall that says this wood reading hut was donated by all these people. So, yeah, I'd be totally into trying to accomplish that, because I do agree with Lisa that this is a kind of a whole. It you know, and having, I mean, some of the elements could be missing, but it is kind of lonely pieces. So, yeah, I'm all for it.
So what the district needs us to do is give the nod to the column just to the right of the yellow line. I feel like we're there. Are we there?
Yeah.
Are we there?
I'm there.
So we're there.
Okay, we will proceed then. There's much more design work
I didn't mean to
do.
cut you off.
No,
Amy.
I am there, I totally agree. I guess where my head is, and maybe it's where other people's is, it's hard to have this conversation in isolation.
Yes.
Because we've talked about lots of other big things for the budget that are not related in terms of personnel. So for me, I believe in this so completely, but it's hard to decide big chunks of money without knowing how it all fits together.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I wanted to say. That every time we see something that looks good, we say, well, it looks good and it's only this much more. And if we don't add those all together and really think about, you know, 50,000 here, 100,000 there, it does add up.
But
this
if you're
first
feeling
column,
like
this
this
first
fits
column,
within a balanced budget, then I'm fully in support of the first column and going forward.
And I think Ellen was acknowledging that some of the other bids have come in lower than expected, and so that does serve as an offset for some of these that right now are costing out a little bit higher. It does sound like it's good direction from the board to continue to evaluate the value savings that we could make throughout the continued design process, whether that's a different material for the benches, understanding that that may increase our maintenance costs, or some other kind of overviews. And I know Kelly will be working with the PTA to explore options for additional funding overall too. But I do think, as Lisa said, it's important that we put the space back to a usable and really desirable space for our students, both in terms of an outdoor classroom, but also for that recess time that students choose to use the indoor outdoor space.
I think this is well worth the money. There's a whole child component. It's not just the academic learning out there, there's an SEL component to all of it. that these kids are gonna need more and more as we go forward into the future, so, yeah.
So I think we have our direction, then we'll continue to work on that and we will bring back for the board updates as we progress.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next is intergovernmental agreement with the village, and I think that would be Carrie.
Absolutely, yes. Ellen and I have continued to have really in-depth conversations with the village, and as I shared 2 weeks ago, we met with representatives from the village on the 29th to follow up on really just trying to finalize the IGA. We've continued to make good progress, and the board has been provided at this point with that final draft of the IGA for your review today. Ultimately, right now, what we are asking for is, we would like to recommend this for approval at the February board meeting with your consent or with any other kind of minor tweaks. If in fact we need a whole lot more discussion, then this item would need probably some additional time to review. So just to kind of lay the ground, the foundation of where we're trying to get. So that's the foundation. A little bit of background information. We believe that much of what we've discussed with the village in several meetings leading up to today are well reflected within the IGA. One noteworthy change, and I know I called it out for the board as well, is the Highcrest parking lot. We've done some work to kind of look at redesigning that parking lot, got some really good ideas, but ultimately that parking lot redesign was more substantial and more costly than what the village had originally envisioned. So they're committed to restoring the parking lot with full resurfacing, but have shared that they are not able to make the proposed redesign enhancements. Essentially, the parking lot will be fully restored to its current layout. The pavement under the temporary access road will be reconstructed, and all other areas will be resurfaced and restored to pre-construction condition, better than pre-construction condition because it will be new surfacing. So this is a little disappointing. We know that, and I know I've heard from a couple of board members who have expressed disappointment with that. At this point, it's my recommendation that we move forward with the IGA despite this little bit of disappointment. As good partners with the village and out of a desire to ensure our ability to fully operate schools at the start of the next school year, I recommend moving forward with the IGA. We know, and the board in your original memo of understanding expressed it's our interest to ensure no loss of operation during the regular school year, and that we can continue to offer our full and complete educational programs in safe and efficient manners. And so that's what we believe the IGA covers us for, and helps to ensure that the project will be wrapped up, or that we will have resumed full access of our building and the parking lot at the start of the new school year. So that would be my recommendation. I am interested in receiving feedback from the board and ultimately getting your direction if we're comfortable with moving forward with action in February at the business meeting, or if we need to go back to the table and continue to refine this plan.
What was the cost difference? Just curious.
It was a significant cost difference. The numbers we're not really clear on, but I think the estimate came in at over $1 million for improving the parking lot. But more than that,
time.
It's also, I think, the timing, and I think it's just the substantial nature of the redesign was really more than what the village had understood we were endeavoring upon. And so there's a cost differential, there's a time differential, and ultimately it wasn't their vision to completely redesign the parking lot is what they have shared with us.
I'll add on that, on the timing, if we were gonna do a redesign, we'd have to go to MWRD, we would have to enter into an IGA with Parks. And he said that just physically they would not be able to deliver in time for school. So that, yes, it's money, and even if they had the money, there's no time.
Did they pay for the cost of the design that
The guy who
process
came
we
here?
went through?
They did.
Okay.
They entered into a contract directly with that.
Are there any little changes that we identified that are worthwhile, or is
We
it gonna
could
look
not
exactly the way
identify
it
it.
was?
I think I have 2 questions. I'm having trouble reading the plat of easement, or at least I just wanna make sure that I understand it correctly. I'll state the source of my confusion and then I'll say what I think the correct answer is. So if I look at the non-exclusive perpetual easement number 1 boundaries.
On the plat.
On the plat of easement, that's where I am. It looks to me like it's that, you know, rectangular-ish, not quite shape there at the top, the bottom border of which is the existing easement to the village. However, there is also the wording temporary easement, and easement is in that top right corner of that same area. I'm interpreting that to mean that the whole area is temporary easement, and that area north of the, oh, maybe John knows.
I think I have a point that's similar to your point.
Well, let me just finish that first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that the non-exclusive perpetual easement area is only the area north of that sort of existing easement. Am I reading this correctly? That's my first question.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Me too.
My follow-up point to Mark is, I'd suggest 2 agreements. One for the perpetual easement, which in my mind is a pretty straightforward agreement, relating to the, the pipe underneath the ground that they already have basically access to, and then the temporary easement would be a separate agreement that would lay out kind of the things that I care most about, right? Starting school, when would we start school? And it's not clear to me, I've read this many times, the difference between, what rights go with the temporary and what rights go with the permanent. And I don't really think it's that, well, I shouldn't say things like this. I would ask, because it seems to me like the perpetual easement is very straightforward. But the temporary is where most of our concerns come to play, and I would say as support for the comment, where in this agreement does it say we have any rights, if things go bad? I couldn't find it. Because we're concerned about school starting, right, when it's supposed to start, and I didn't quite see it. I was expecting to see it. I was expecting to see clearly labeled obligations of the municipality. The first one, school will start on this day.
Yeah, I
I
think.
think there's I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's all I had.
I was just gonna say there are dates specifically in here with regards to the parking lot and doing us having the parking lot complete by that August 15th date, which is before the teachers come back to school.
I guess the way I would follow up my understanding of your comment, John, is it is clear that we say, whereas the interest of the school district is to ensure no loss of operation of the subject property, et cetera, that whereas is incorporated. Where is the agreement to, remediation if that doesn't happen? And it might be in there, I just haven't seen it.
You might recall at the discussion that we had at High Crest, we had some discussion around mediation if things go sour, and I think the discussion led to a direction from village representatives saying that would, mediation would not
remediation.
Remediation.
No, mediation. You weren't there.
I was talking about what?
Mediating what? What element would we remediate?
You're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I think
you're
we are
saying remediation, I think, with respect to if we don't get what we want.
If something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. And the
so what
answer
Carrie's
is,
saying,
we were talking about maybe going to mediation for that. Is that the idea?
But that's just the beginning of what she's saying.
Okay.
I think, right? Because then they said, oh no mediation. And then I believe someone on the board said, oh, that's fine, we can litigate.
Well, I think they
That's
were
good.
saying it was.
And then they said,
that's someone new.
I'm the proud owner of that comment. And then they said, oh no, don't worry.
That never happens here.
And then Bob came up to talk us down from the edge, I think, at some point. And that's where it was.
I think he may have said, and this is my own recollection, but I think he may have said, yes, in fact, if something went really south, you would have to litigate. There wouldn't be an opportunity things out too long, and so yes, we would have to go to litigation. However, we are good partners and that won't
Yeah.
happen. It's very clear when the turnover of property needs to occur, and so Ellen and I have discussed this point several times with the village, and it is very clear that they must turn over property on August 15th, 2020 to us, and so that ultimately
Carrie, can I
Yes.
follow up? What the clarity? So the clarity is that the temporary easement ends on that day.
yes.
Why can't we have that in a separate agreement that says this temporary easement lasts until this day? And then you have no rights.
And I think too, the exhibits, like the colored exhibits at the back, I think that call out specifically like the early access, the full access, and the late access, talk about those dates, so I think that the June 12th through August 15th, and the, full access, that's when they're expecting to have full access, that's kind of the date in there, and then it has to go back to all the late access provisions that are listed out in the
Okay, I just have one more thing to say, which is I only remember one thing from property law in law school, which is that you can do nothing about easements when you grant them. They last forever. There's nothing you can do. Once you grant this, they will have that easement forever. Does everybody remember that from who went to the
Totally.
Yeah.
From law school.
Remember that? So I'm wary of easements, especially documents that need to be interpreted, that should probably be much more clear.
Is that so? Having not gone to law school,
Yes.
is that true? If
That's
you
all I
grant-
knew. I told you everything I know.
Well, maybe
Mark.
you'll get this one. I mean,
Yeah,
it's very
I won't.
closely
I won't.
related. Is that true if you grant? Is that true for the temporary easement as well as the permanent easement,
Well,
or just the
I
permanent?
think
easement?
if you have a contract that's confusing, you'd be a lawyer and say, well, it's confusing. You tell me when it ends, and then cite some interpretation of something attached, which would be not a good idea
So
if this ends up in
let me just see
litigation.
if we can move this forward. Can we talk to council and ask, doesn't seem like it would be hard to separate the two, so do two IGAs, one on temporary and one on permanent easement. Did I get it?
That'd be
Says
great.
for clarification.
I mean, it doesn't feel like it would be hard to do, it's just more paper and separating.
I like that also because long term, you're gonna have that document in your files, and the other one tear up hopefully in 2 years. And they have the two things in the same document, it's muddled, it has all sorts of.
I like that idea.
So I agree with that, if it's feasible.
I can't imagine,
We're not disagreeing
Why not?
with what they're saying, we're just saying make it clearer. Can I ask one question actually, back to the driveway thing, and I understand it's like way too expensive and all that, but there's one thing in the driveway rebuilding that I completely agree with, and I'm just wondering if there's any possible way to make it happen. The entryway, the very beginning, that turn from, when you turn right off of Hunter, the angle of the turn and the way that kids cross right at the S-turn is so dangerous and horrible for cars and kids, and someone almost hit my daughter the other day because we were driving like 30 miles around that curve. But that curve is so poorly designed. Is there any way to when they rebuild this, when they fix this driveway, can we at least either move the entry so there's not an S-curve there, like move it north? Is there and just have them take a look at that to see if within the budget, not for $1 million more, but within the budget, if without messing with the whole redesign of the rest of the driveway and the in-out, there's a way to simplify that part of our driveway when they rebuild. because that alone would be a huge improvement. If we could redo where the kids cross, how they cross over to the building, and where the cars enter, somehow, if we could figure out a better solution. It's so hard going around that corner, you kinda can't see it on your right, you can't see the cars coming at you, and then there's kids crossing on the left, crossing on the right, just don't know where they are, and it's just bad. Like, that's, in my opinion, the worst part of the entrance of Highcrest. So, that's just a suggestion.
We can certainly go back to the village and ask about that. I will tell you that there were several elements that we thought were important to safety and to improve the just flow of traffic. And the direction that we received is that it will be rebuilt as it stands right now. But this is a priority for the board, and I can take that back to them and see if they will look at reconstructing.
Anyone else could say
Yeah,
something.
no,
It's
I
just
hadn't
my
thought of
personal
it.
opinion, having
No, it's
4
good.
kids through there,
I see your point now that you raise it. So, I mean, if it truly is safer to redesign it, the front a different way, so it doesn't have an S curve.
I don't, teachers might have a
then
different
why
opinion
wouldn't
too.
we?
Well, if they
The redesign had an S curve, it just hit the crossing.
No, I'm saying right now they're gonna put it back
No, but I
with
mean
the S curve.
The one we got
Yeah, the
nice
redesign
design
actually
for.
had 2 places students had to cross.
Oh, is that right?
Instead of 1. So
Yeah.
I assume that it was considered safe as well, but.
Kelly, were you gonna say something?
Well, I was just thinking,
Greater hands.
well, Bridget had mentioned that they are doing the intersection there as well, so, and I don't know when that is, but that Ventura and Illinois intersection. So if there were a way even to, and we're moving the sign, right, so if there were a way to even just move the sidewalk down so it was a straight across cross instead of on the curve edge, that could be a part, that could be, kinda get to that, so it's less, so it's more right where this yellow comes across rather than in the corner there.
Or down instead of, so it is north-south instead of east to west.
Yeah, or something like that, so,
I don't know.
just a thought.
You know, you can, I mean, part of the problem you mentioned is speed. You could introduce speed bumps, you could put stop signs or other things to modify people's behavior. Just as a point of explanation though, that S turn is there to get the driveway entrance off of that intersection.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether the municipality will let you have a a driveway entrance right at a road.
An intersection.
No, that makes sense. It's just a harsh curve. It's a weirdly.
I think there's also no stop signs once you turn in either. Could also
Yeah, I mean, anything that would help.
To slow people down.
All right.
Aaron,
Aaron.
go ahead.
So if we really don't think it's safe as is, and the village won't budge off of anything different, could we pay for something different?
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
if it's
can
not
I
safe.
rephrase, can I
Yes.
have a different phrasing of that, which is, I
Absolutely.
assume that we think that it's safe as is. If
Okay.
there's an easier way to make it safer,
Okay, yeah.
I think we might be amenable to. Is that fair?
Yep, that's accurate, yeah. It's like when I used the word dire at that other meeting. It's like that. It's like that.
Yeah.
We know what you meant.
Yeah.
So I had noticed that there were some issues when it was brought up before us in this context. And so if they're not gonna make the changes, either if there are minimal changes that they're able to make when they do the reconstruction, that would be fantastic with the sidewalks or whatever they're rebuilding. If they can't, then yes, what Mark just said, been there,
I have a totally different
Mark.
thing. Okay.
totally different thing.
Has there been a point 4 on this is about village's right to access non-exclusive perpetual easement after final completion. My question is, I'm when I read this, it all sounds good until I get to the sentence that says, an emergency shall be determined by the village in its sole discretion, which to me, in my non-lawyerly mind, makes all the rest of the stuff almost useless. But my question is, has there been any discussion of that phrase, and is that sort of already gone?
We did discuss that.
We did discuss that at our prior meeting, we spent some time
Right.
discussing that, and in follow-up we did as well. There isn't a clear way to articulate what an emergency, what qualifies as an emergency, and I think, where we settled on is ultimately if it is a bona fide emergency, the village would have the opportunity to step in and, access that perpetual easement for the greater good.
Completely agree that I
We
assume
discussed
that
it.
everybody would say, if there's a real emergency, everybody wants them to get in and
Yep.
fix it.
Yeah.
The question is, who determines whether it's a bona fide emergency, and if
We
we've
talked
discussed
about
that.
that, yeah.
And you guys are all good with, they get to do it?
They wouldn't budge. I
Yeah.
don't know that this was a.
Also, why would they want to? I mean,
It's-
what are they gonna
well,
wanna do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pipe underneath the
Party on
ground.
the easement.
It'd be,
Yeah.
it'd be
You know
really
the village
bad.
guys, you never know what they're gonna do. Okay.
Their
I'm-
concern is if they had to go to the Rolodex
it
and
was
somebody
fairly
didn't answer,
convincing.
and now suddenly you have an hour delay, 2-hour delay. I mean, that was their statement.
I
In
would've-
addition to they're just going anyway.
Yeah.
But, again, if ship sailed, the ship sailed,
Right.
I'm okay,
It
it's
sailed
the
on that
board's
one.
decision. But, my comeback would've been, look, if you have to access it and you think it's a bona fide emergency, go ahead and do it. We'll tell you later if you were right or not, you know?
I think that's how it's gonna roll no matter what the.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Documents is-
no, now it's not gonna roll that way. Now it's gonna roll, they're gonna tell us that it was a bona fide emergency. I'm saying, look, if you honestly believe it's a bona fide emergency and we have this wonderful relationship that you've described, that's great. Then go and access it and we'll tell you if it was actually an emergency. And we're good partners just like you, so, you know, if it's a bona fide emergency, we'll say yes, and you got nothing to worry about. What are you worried about?
So are you proposing language change?
No, not if everybody here already agreed to it. I think that's fine. I just wanna make sure everybody was already agreed with it.
I don't know that it was agreed, we just discussed it and it didn't seem like it was a point of negotiation.
You just wanna take out the phrase sole discretion and just leave it.
I would just say the sole discretion is in the districts.
I think the
But-
village articulated that
Yeah, they're not going to do that.
they believe it's their discretion and that they have experts in that field that would be able to better define whether or not it's a bona fide emergency. Again, this is not for lack of talking about these points.
Okay.
We certainly
Let's-
have talked about them. At the end of the day, I think the board needs to decide, are we going to be good partners and share our driveway during the time when it's
Yes.
not otherwise in use for the village's access to the Park District fields, or are we not? And if we're not, they have indicated they will find a different route to get there. They don't think it will be as easy as the route they've identified in partnership with us. But essentially, I think what they have conveyed is that they will find a different way to get to the playfields if this easement can't be granted. And
So I guess
we have done the best we can to review this and to negotiate in good faith, I think. I think the parking lot is a disappointment, and where Ellen and I kinda landed with clear direction from the village is they aren't going to make any other changes. Some of the issues that you brought up are similar to what some of our concerns are, but we certainly can go back and again reiterate that.
So I guess for me to answer your question,
Yeah.
I would say I have not seen evidence that leads me to believe particularly strongly that they're great partners, but I haven't dealt with them that much. So I think my evidence is weak. So my question to you would be, having dealt with them, and Ellen and whoever else has dealt with them, do you have confidence that we can enter into these agreements and that we will have a good partner in these agreements, given that good partnership is, handshake and not what's legally agreed to in the contract? I gotta, I mean, at the end of the day, you're responsible.
I do have confidence that at the end of the day, their intention is to turn over the school district parking lot to us in time for us to operate school. I think they have a good understanding of the impact that would have on our school district if they fail in that regard. I think we have conveyed that well. I think they understand the value of our schools in our community as a whole, and if there were something to go awry, that would be incredibly problematic, they've built a plan B for what they will do if something does go awry with their project and causes a substantial delay. They will use Birchwood Lane, they have assured us of that.
And they did.
Am I disappointed that some
no,
of
no,
these
you're,
other things aren't in there? Absolutely,
Yeah.
but I also understand their need as a municipality to ensure that they can access some of the emergency equipment that will be installed underground if there were, if there's a bona fide emergency, they need to fix the pipe.
and we got all kinds of concessions, right, from those meetings. Did we not? Oh, I'm being positive.
Did we get concessions?
We did. We got 2 extra feet on our fence. That's something.
I guess, and that.
I'm positive, Lisa.
No, I mean, that to me isn't a concession, right? A concession is a new parking lot, right? A concession is something to the benefit. The fact that the fence was only 6 feet tall and somebody doesn't even need to pole vault to get over it is a different issue.
I could climb over it.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess our definitions of concessions are different. Like when I think of the word concession, I sit there and think it's somehow we're getting a benefit. And I don't see in this a benefit. What we're doing by approving this MOU is we are enabling this to go faster for the good of the village at risk to ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? And so we are balancing what I believe to be a big risk with greater good for everyone in the village.
Yeah.
So,
But doesn't this give us some more control? Like if we don't do it, then we don't have any control.
I mean, at the end of the day, they are going to undertake a ginormous construction project that is going to be disruptive to teaching and learning in our district. And that is because the village government has decided this is what needs to happen for the village of Wilmette, for the greater good. And so we can say, okay, we're gonna take some hits and get almost nothing for it, for the absolute and complete disruption. But we know that we're doing it to expedite the whole thing. That's why we're doing it.
and for the good of the village.
That's what yes.
Yeah.
And then
To
for the good of
expedite
the
the good of
village,
the
it's
village.
expediting it.
Yeah.
Like, because if they have to go through Birchwood, if we say no easement, it's gonna take way longer, and that disrupts all the Park District programming and our programming that happens outside.
Yeah.
Right.
So, Lisa, I think your description was great. And I think that it's exactly that balance of the risk that we're taking on to help out the good of the village that's at issue. And so my question really to carry into the administration is, I personally don't feel like we've done a great job protecting ourselves from the risk. But I admit that I don't think that they're people who are trying to make things go badly for us. I think they're trying to get done what they're trying to get done. I don't think they are acting in bad faith, but I just don't know. But I feel like they're protecting a lot of their risk, and we're not necessarily protecting a lot of ours. And so, that's where I am. So I'm asking whether the administration feels like, yeah, we can handle taking on this risk.
I think sorry, let me just respond to that and then maybe Sandra can chime in, thank you. I think that the risks that we have been able to identify in terms of our fiber, in terms of our access to fields, in terms of the impact on running PE classes, noise, vibrations of the building, all of those risks that we have been able to identify, I think the village has been good partners in helping to mitigate those risks. I think Lisa is right that added benefit to the school district maybe isn't realized through this agreement, but mitigating the risks that can be identified at this point, I think this plan has allowed us to do that in ways that if we didn't have an IGA at all or weren't considering that, we wouldn't have been able to talk through some of those risks.
I just wanted to, just as a point of clarification too, there is some cost benefit for doing it too, because the repavement of that entire parking lot was supposed to be part of phase 1, but it was put on hold because we knew we were doing construction now, and so they are going to pay for redoing their parking lot too.
That's true. Thank you for
That is just
yes.
And we are protected from any damage done to any buildings
restoring to as good or better condition.
And they're just, I mean, they did, depending on who's on the board, obviously the relationships can differ, but they did work with us on the tax issue. So, I mean, there's at least some attempt to work with us on some of this.
Are you referring to the stormwater fees that they were
Yeah.
assessing?
But I mean, why they even assessed us is one thing,
Well,
but
yeah.
they did work with us to then
Double dipping.
reverse that.
So I just wanna be clear on what we're, yeah.
Has been waiting for really long.
No, it's just a tiny question, I think it's hopefully very easy, but it's what made my antenna go up, cause I know in the meeting at High Crest, we talked about how their workers don't get screened. And we said ours do. So in this revised document, it says their spotter or flagger will be subject to a background check, but it says it's their sole discretion to determine if that individual is barred. So I am not a lawyer, but that made me nervous, so should it, or are we okay with that?
That's a really good question, and in fact, let's see if we can get some additional clarification to that, because that
then I
is the
think, well,
one
why are we
individual
doing it?
who will
Right.
likely have contact with our
Yeah.
students.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a little cut and dry. You have a record, you've committed a crime, you're a registered sex offender, you shouldn't have this job.
Right.
Like I don't.
Can we share our criteria, maybe? Like so when we do background checks, what is our criteria?
It's a great idea.
Can they, that piece I do not feel comfortable with. But I think it should be easy to solve.
Are we sharing our criteria or requiring our criteria?
Well, I'm saying as we explore the issue, is that a solution? Please
Pretty cut
use
and
our
dry.
criteria.
It's pretty cut and dry.
Or you have to use
Or be
that criteria.
processed through
Yes,
our.
yes.
We
Please,
can-
yes, yes.
Sorry,
yes.
I'm just.
Amy, actually, what I think we can do is request that individual, it may be a set of individuals, because not everyone works every single day.
Right.
That set of individuals be processed through our human resources department and the background checks that we typically do for our own employees.
Right.
At
So
their
I
It
think
didn't
expense.
read to me like they were game for that, but that would make me
we
feel
can
better.
certainly.
So I think that we need to make that, this is a matter of safety for our students,
Yes.
and it's a great catch, and it should be a non-negotiable. As should, I don't know, what does it cost to screen the district? Okay, good enough is come on.
To keep
Carrie,
it
can I-
controlled.
$1 million.
I'd put it in there, they're paying for it anyway, I mean, come on.
Just if I can add one piece to this. Every day, the village, actually the police department employs crossing guards that are hired, screened, and cross our kids very comparably to this position. So if we wanted to go a different route, it could be of same caliber or depth as you would your crossing guards, just because right now we don't screen those people. But they're crossing our kids on a daily basis. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw another option on the
Love
table.
that.
Great option.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Tony. So
Sure.
we'll explore
That's
either of
going in.
those. It sounds like there's confidence from the board in either having the police department screen them, similar to a crossing guard, or having them be processed through our HR department. Great.
We do
That's
not.
easy enough to do.
So I don't wanna close this out before it needs to get closed out, but I feel like there's the two issues. The first is separating, so now having two agreements, a permanent and a temporary easement, like agreements, and then the screening. Is there anything else that people want addressed?
I heard
Sounds
the
like-
S-curve being one that
Oh,
we
yeah.
needed to explore.
I'm not hopeful.
Well, just, when they do it, they can, well, I don't know if it's possible, but, fix the
I
S-curve.
don't think they can change the road, but the sidewalk maybe.
It'll be an
Because
export.
the new-
We will
If
explore
they're
that.
ripping it up, I'm just saying, like,
They don't.
that sometimes
District.
roads aren't sometimes they're not just designed like in a good S-curve. I mean, you know how sometimes it's too
Yeah.
sharp or
Well, I don't even
what?
play that, I don't think it's crap.
Too sharp, too, you know.
I bet you they corrected the
John, did you have another issue?
I had a clarity issue. Could we make it excruciatingly clear that the easement ends on August 15th? Like in the first sentence.
That the temporary easement ends on August 15th.
That's what I
Want
meant,
to make
yes.
that even more clear than
No, I
it is.
want it to be like in highlights in black and bold. It ends. And if you and then let them dream about what happens if it ends. they're still using the road.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can look at
And we could always be obnoxious and throw a mediation clause in there. Just, because that's really what there should be. Because really,
There should be something.
there should be
I agree
something.
with that.
You don't just.
Sorry.
There's too much risk here for there not to be a mediation clause. I know they don't want it.
I think
but
their perspective on it was timing wise. The easement ends on August 15th.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, we're not going to have time to go through the mediation process. It actually will be a temporary injunction.
Oh, I see what the problem
Yeah.
is. Yeah. I meant mediation on what the damages are.
Yes.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, I'm assuming
Yeah,
damages. Yeah.
that's my point. My point is damages.
Because we'll have to
too.
pay
That's
for
my
everything.
mediation point. Or my road mediation point.
Including, I'm assuming if there are emergencies that are or the delays cause some kind of emergency
Yeah.
in the programming world, we're gonna throw money at the problem to fix it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be renting another school maybe, or who knows?
So
You don't know.
In this regard, I really need some clear direction from the board. We can work on separating these out into 2 IGAs. I think that is achievable.
Do it.
I think that the background check for the flagger is also achievable. The redesign of the safety elements of the parking lot, I'm about 50-50 on. I don't know. I'm not a parking lot expert. I don't know what it takes to redesign all of that. So I certainly will go back and share that that's a priority of our board. At the end of the day, those 3 things sound like we can still move forward with approving the IGA in February with those considerations being made. The mediation of damages, are you saying that you will not approve this without a clause defining mediation of damages?
No, I don't. It doesn't matter. If it goes south, I mean, it's just gonna be really ugly.
So
What,
how
can
about
you
this?
tell us what that, why do you say that? What would that do for us? What happens if we don't have it?
Well, if you don't have it, then it's you got to figure it out later. And I have no idea. I just play lawyer here, but I shouldn't, and I don't mean to, because we have really great counsel who can correct me, I'm sure. But I would imagine that if they're out on August 15th and they still want to use our roads, they have to come back to us and say, okay, under what terms can we use your roads?
I was thinking of the damages differently.
Yeah.
So the noise is so terrible that the kids along where construction is happening have to be relocated to what do you call it? The
Yeah.
other district of Avoca Fields, right? They have to get
yeah.
relocated. The cost of that relocation or busing, or
Well,
I'm just like, this is worst case,
well,
like
that's good.
total drama.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, it's any kind of damage that we have to mitigate because of construction, not because of the easement.
I love that. That's way better than what I was
See?
saying. Yeah.
That's why you went to law school.
There. That's why you're the president.
That's
I'm
right.
gonna
No
send-
kidding.
You know, I'm just gonna send my invoice.
We better get this meeting over quick.
Yeah,
'cause
sorry.
I have a feeling your hourly rate is more than we can afford.
Lisa has a good point. I mean, it goes to unforeseeable things.
Yes, I think that
So-
is attempted to be addressed in the whereas statements at no additional cost to the school district. But what I'm hearing is the board would like that to be even more clear.
Then what is the process by which we will address unforeseen expenses due to this project?
Thank you. That was the mediation point I was struggling with.
She,
But she
think?
did it.
so
She
much
actually
better.
did it.
So much
She
better.
did
We did it
Thank you,
together.
Lisa.
Yeah. And I do worry about this.
Ugh.
Many of us have spent many
Yeah.
I guess so. So Lisa, John, and I have obviously talked about this. Can I just, do you guys have reactions to this part of the sort of risk profile and putting this in?
I support it. I think it's worth exploring, and
think it goes back to Carrie's point though. Is this a deal breaker?
Yes. I think it is.
So we just have to play out what happens if we don't have this.
Cause my gut is, I think this would be great.
They don't have a
I don't think
choice.
they're gonna give it to us. So then we say no easement.
Well,
I say then we call a special board
yeah,
meeting.
there's no. I mean, the giving is all us to them.
That's
I think.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I'm
we're
just
saying,
saying,
if things go wrong, who pays?
Right.
It cannot be us.
Right.
And just spelling it out more clearly.
And if this is really a problem, I would be surprised. We are not asking for anything other
What?
than
Sorry.
There's,
If this is really a problem, then there's a deeper problem than this.
agreed.
cause there's nothing in here that's protecting us right now, as it is. I mean,
I think the
Tanya,
village's
hello.
perspective is they know their commitment is to turn over the property on August 15th. That is their commitment. They have asked for some trust intergovernmentally to approach that. But with that being said, I'm hearing the board say very clearly you want to have it spelled out, or you're not comfortable moving forward with an intergovernmental agreement. That's the direction I need from you is
Yes.
if
I'm-
the answer is no, are
Well, it just
you
seems-
in a position where you're going to say then I'm not going to sign the intergovernmental agreement, I'm not going to take action with it?
John, Mark, what was the exact statement that can you read it again, what?
That we're looking for a process by which we will address unforeseen expenses due to this project. Basically, if things go wrong, who will pay? We wanna have a mediation
No.
clause.
Yeah, I think hopefully. So just my little tweak on that is, I hope it's clear that if things go wrong, we will not pay. To me, the question is more, how do we decide how much they pay? Do others agree with that? I mean, I don't wanna get into a question about like who's gonna pay.
Yeah.
That,
I think that we need some kind of person who does this for a living to make a recommendation with the understanding that we would like a process whereby we are protected from costs associated with ensuring teaching and learning goes on in the schools as it needs to happen. Right? I mean, Zed,
yep,
Yep.
that's our business.
that's our business.
Okay, thank you for that direction. We will work, Ellen and I, on that over the next week. We will hope to have something back to the board for your consideration in time for the February board meeting. And if we're not able to accomplish that, then I do believe we'll probably be looking at some kind of a special board meeting for future action, whether that be at the March committee of the whole meeting, the March regular meeting, or sometime before that. I do believe the village is hoping very much that this can get approved at the February business meeting of our board.
I do agree with Mark though, that asking for that is not a nasty or I think it's a very fair, reasonable thing for us to be asking for that in here somewhere.
Agree?
Smart. Okay. Are we done with this topic?
So we will revisit, all right, if they turn us down on that, we will have a chance to revisit this again as a board. I wanna make sure that we don't place you all in a position where you are uncomfortable moving forward without an intergovernmental agreement.
I think the direction you've given is pretty clear. Either these 4 things get addressed or you don't wanna see it up for action at the February board meeting.
That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, that's good.
That's the direction I heard.
What's the matter, Amy? You don't like?
No,
Well,
I do agree with that, I just wanna make sure that we're not,
I don't see it as us holding them back at all. I don't see it as argumentative or like us stopping them. I think it's all pretty reasonable stuff that we're asking for, and they wanna move forward, and we're basically saying, move forward, this is what's missing, and I don't think it's asking too much, so.
I'm just clarifying steps. If they say no, what happens? we don't have an agreement or we have a special meeting.
I have been told by the board that if these aren't incorporated,
We're done.
I cannot recommend this to the board for approval at the February board meeting because we'll need to have some more discussion around it.
Okay.
So I think what we're gonna
Okay,
do
I'm good.
is, we're gonna do one step at a time.
Yep,
Just wait and
I'm
see what
good.
they
Yeah. Oh yeah.
wanna move forward.
Thank you.
Behooves them. Okay, Ramona.
Thank you. Lisa was asking for a reminder at what time we need to break. We must break by 5:45 in
Oh.
order to conduct executive session and return in time for the scheduled interviews. So I can give a quick update on Ramona. I'm happy to do so. And Cindy Anderson is here with me, and she was also with me when I met with the Ramona Playground Committee, who are doing great work.
Thank you.
Colby,
Thanks,
for being
Colby.
here, and
Thanks,
Sarah,
Andrew.
and Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So the board, you'll recall, asked me to meet with the Ramona PTA Playground Committee and with Mrs. Anderson to really review what their plans are and how the board might better support their efforts to ensure that this playground improvement project can be accomplished in the near future. They're doing a ton of fundraising, but we all recognize, I think, that the playground is due for some improvements for safety reasons with students, but also parity across the district. And so I met with the PTA Playground Committee. They have a really neat project design, and I think I shared that with the board for your review. Ultimately, the project will cost about $120,000 to accomplish. They believe they'll be at about $60,000. Their goal is to be at about $60,000 by the end of this year, and they think that they can raise $25,000 to $30,000 next year. So that's leaving a gap of about $30,000. I think it would be wonderful and would help them in their efforts if the board could consider contributing that gap amount if they reach their fundraising goals as kind of our effort toward improving the safety of the playground there. As we continue, as the board is looking at improving kind of the process for playground improvement, I think this is a more immediate need.
I'm sorry, you said improving the safety twice. Do we think this playground is unsafe in any way?
We do not believe the playground to be unsafe, but we do recognize that not all students can play on this playground at the same time, and so that's an element that we want to improve.
Okay. I just wanna be
Yeah.
super careful that we are clear about whether we are making improvements because it's unsafe currently, or because there are things that we can do that will improve the playground, its utility, etc., which are different from saying it's unsafe currently. You know what I mean?
I do, and it is
Okay.
not unsafe currently.
Thank you.
We can
That's-
improve matters for our
thank you.
students.
It's not fully accessible right now.
It's not, and even this design, it's hard to make a fully accessible playground.
Right.
But we have involved my OT, my occupational therapist, my physical therapist, and LBSs to really think about our students' needs. So for instance, the stairs and the heights of the stairs and how large they are really designed well for, we have a lot of students who wear orthotics. And so it's really designed so that those students can get on the playground and access it. We, not included in this, we just came together and talked about adding a Braille board because we have a lot of students who are vision impaired and thought that that would be neat. As we were discussing, we discussed that kindergartners would likely be on this playground, so we also talked about making a ground level, the window where the kids pretend to order ice cream or whatnot. So we're talking about adding some of the younger elements into this, so which is all great. So my vision teacher designed the colors purposefully for some of our students who have vision impairments and can find the edging more safely. So we really thought about our population and how to design it well. And then know that if we ever had a student with a wheelchair, we would buy a swing that would go on our current swing set that would be wheelchair accessible also. So we've had all of the discussions making sure that it could be accessible to everybody.
Just throwing it out there, but there are groups that like help with playgrounds. There are different kinds of groups. It'd be interesting to reach out to them, and also we have New Trier. We have artists, like kids that are just into building and art. It'd be really interesting if we could partner with New Trier, get some of the old students that, let's say, that went to Ramona and, are you artists, and maybe see if they would be interested where they could come and do a tactile wall or something, and do, and have them contribute to playgrounds.
Some of those extra elements, not the actual
Yeah, the extra not the apparatus, but the extra elements for these. It might add a lot to the playgrounds, and then have a community invested in each of the playgrounds. It could be.
So what action are you looking for tonight? Just a nod that the $30,000 expenditure is a good idea?
Yes, what I would like to do is go back to the Ramona PTA and let them know that the board is supportive of contributing to that extent. That way they can communicate to their constituents that they have board support and that they believe if they can continue on their trajectory and reach their goals for fundraising, that this project can actually be accomplished in the summer of 2021. That will, I think, further energize their fundraising efforts and give a more firm, if we can get to $90,000 by next summer, this project can be accomplished, and the board is very supportive of that effort, is I think the message that I'd like to carry back to the Ramona PTA committee, PTA Playground Committee, and I know they'd like to share then with their membership and those who are supporting this effort throughout their community.
I think that's a good partnership.
Thank you.
So I'm seeing, John, you're the only nod I haven't seen.
No, I'm good.
So you have
Thank you.
unanimous head nodding.
No votes, just unanimous head nod.
Thank you.
I didn't expect me to get a
Oh.
motion.
Jesus
Christ.
That's what happened to me.
It's really good.
It is really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Pam,
You're
making me
tear up. I know.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's such a big deal.
Well, this is an emotional meeting. So having already addressed the SFC item on the agenda earlier this evening, we're gonna move on to strategy. So I turn the meeting over to Strategy Committee Chair Mark Steen.
Thank you, and I'm turning it over to whoever I'm turning it over to. Is it Carrie or Kristen or someone?
Yeah, Kristen can talk us through where we're at with this process.
So, as you know, we submitted the RFP for special education and RTI evaluation. We received 4 submissions, reviewed those through a rubric, and brought in 2 organizations to do interviews with us. And after the interviews, I think the interview team was all very comfortable with Atlantic Research Partners, who really offered a very customized and deep dive kind of into what our programming and services are, along with a commitment to understanding where our strengths and weaknesses are and how to help support us as we move forward and really improve our programming and services for our kids. So I guess what we would like to do is, I think you have a copy of the proposal and the information, like sort of a direction from the board about whether we can be able to move forward with this. We would ask for approval at the next board meeting.
I found it.
Go for it.
So I think the scope was great. I got exhausted reading it. That is an incredible amount of work on your team's part to fulfill the requirements, right? I mean, and so the one thing I thought about is I read that in conjunction with CEC's scope of work, and we're talking about that later. But I'm just thinking about the bandwidth, because depending on what consultant we pick tonight, it's a heavy lift for you guys.
Yes.
Both pieces at the same time. I just want to make sure, and I'm not saying no to either. I'm just saying I'm not sure how that's going to work.
I can address that. It is a heavy lift.
Yes.
Both of these endeavors are really heavy lifts, and the bandwidth will require a lot of extra effort on our part. I think it's important work, though, and so I think we need to commit ourselves to that. It is, quite frankly, why I am so passionate about getting some of these other matters moving forward, because I think this is really the meat of what we need to be focused on for our students and for our staff. This is really important work for the mission of our district. And sometimes I feel as though I've spent some time on other things that aren't really impacting the teaching and learning of our students, and there's work to be done there, and so that's the work I really want to focus on. So it will be a heavy lift.
Can I just follow up with one other thought?
Yes.
In terms of, so I think when I think about what comes first, it's this. And I just think about one thing for you is staging. I don't know if we can do both at the same time.
We will have to think about that,
Yeah.
and I think it's one of the things that we have to think about as we pursue the interviews this evening, and
Yes.
then follow up on some of the interviews for this evening, because I think the work that Kristen is proposing really will help to dig into special education and our intervention services and guide some of the action plans that will support the work of the strategic plan. It will really define what some of those action steps will be. The strategic plan is the overarching umbrella, which will inform what is really our vision for the next 3 to 5 years of improvement overall. This will help to supplement that in some really key areas that probably won't be as well evaluated with the overarching vision work that a strategic plan will offer us. So I do see them coming hand in hand, but I do think as well that is it reasonable for us to have the full strategic plan developed and approved by August, or do we need to look at adjusting that timeline? I'm open to that. I think this is really critical though.
I have a question for you, Carrie,
Please.
and then a question for Lisa too.
Yeah.
Do you think that approving this changes the calculus for the 3 proposals tonight? In other words, if we say yes to this, does it have a different implication for which one we might choose than if we didn't say yes to this? I don't know why we wouldn't say yes to this, but.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think that as this gets approved, we need to work with those strategic planning consultants to ensure that the timeline will encapsulate the work and the outcomes of this audit.
Okay.
So I think they kind of go hand in hand again. To be really frank, I think in follow-up to this evening's presentations, that will be something that we need to ask really directly, is how they see incorporating the findings of this evaluation into the work that we're doing for a strategic plan overall.
But based on what you've seen from the 3, you're not thinking, gee, if we approve this, I really don't want to go with number 2.
Nope.
Okay.
No.
Thanks.
Are any of these, or between the 2 things, is there if we don't get it done by a certain date, then we lose a year? Cause that's another consideration. I mean, it's one thing to say this is more important, but if we say one thing's more important and then the other one slips an entire year, that has a different implication.
Yeah, so in my view, a strategic plan has kind of a long-term vision, and so it isn't as year-bound as some of the other staffing work that we do. So the answer to your question is no, I don't see one slipping a whole year because the other is introduced.
So that would be important if that was up, but that's a good one. That helps.
I wanna thank both of you. You're both new and to go into this from the get-go, my hats off to both of you. It's important.
I would echo that. It's crucial and amazing. I'll speak as someone, with a lot of knowledge of the special ed kids that go through our school system. We go through and we have a reputation as being a very, high performing district for kids with differences in general. But we can always be better, and the fact that you came in right off the bat, identifying things that you thought we could improve on, and I think that's amazing. And not only that, but before this, even before this, I want to just acknowledge that you guys have already made improvements without them, which is amazing. So, and parents have noticed, so that's already begun to happen, and it's so on an excellent system, we've already started to make improvements, and then this will further that. So it's necessary to, just like any other curriculum changes, there are changes, we know statewide even, to the way that people include individuals with differences and the mindset of what is a difference to begin with. So I think as we move more to one-to-one education, the whole notion of difference is shifted and changed, and this is part of it, and I really applaud your efforts.
then as one of the planks of the strategic plan? Is that how?
I think it will inform the actions under which we'll accomplish the strategic plan goals. So I guess I think of the strategic plan as really identifying the 3 or 4 key areas we really want to focus, and this would help to drive or inform the action plans that are identified under what I anticipate to be one of those, which probably will focus on student learning and growth. So it will inform the action plan supporting.
Are there any other questions? So, no votes, but I think people are pretty darn excited about this. Thank you very much for the work, and it sounds like something that you're going to be pretty excited about.
Yep.
So we're really happy about that.
Now, don't you cry too. We will recommend this action to the board then in February.
Terrific. We will be excited about that, I think. That moves us on to the strategic planning process.
And just a really quick update, because we do have these interviews this evening. We did receive 9 responses to our request for information from consulting firms, and the individuals we reached out to. Our team met to review those proposals on the 3rd. We did a really thorough review and evaluation against some of what we identified to be our priorities, and we identified the 3 firms who will be coming this evening to present to the board. So this evening will look like a presentation. Each firm has been invited to be with us for about 45 minutes. We have a team inclusive of the board, but also our administration, representing our building leaders as well as our central office team. And so they will present for approximately 20 minutes, and then we'll have approximately 20 minutes to ask follow-up questions, clarification, or identify any other issues that we might want to learn more about. After we process through all 3 of those interviews, we'll have a debriefing session of the team, and at that time I will look for your feedback. Not necessarily selecting one firm, but giving me feedback about pros and cons and benefits and follow-up items that you want us to look into. So whether that's timing, or how are we going to incorporate the special education evaluation, or how will we really ensure that we get community input and feedback as we go through this process. Some of those questions I'll need you to identify. Ultimately, I will need to make a recommendation to the board of who I want to recommend as hiring for this work. But I'm pretty confident that by the end of the evening we'll have consensus or near consensus with some additional items for me to follow up on. So I'm really eager to host these interviews this evening. So thanks everyone for giving up your entire evening to me.
And I think, Carrie, the thing that you mentioned to me that was helpful that I'll just remind is, 5 of us went through this when we were doing a different selection process a year ago, but we may all want to be thinking about sort of questions that we would ask of all 3 to help us sort of create some differentiation between them. So just because we have a few minutes to think before then, I thought I'd mention that. And thank you, Carrie, for telling me that earlier today.
Yeah, it's along the same theme from a tactical standpoint, the question thing that you mentioned, but the 15 minutes between the groups, I mean, roughly speaking, will we discuss each group a little bit right after, or will we wait till the end?
Till the end.
Okay.
What I would ask is we allow them to present, we ask them as many questions as we can until we get to a breaking point, and then we'll invite the next group in. At the very end, after we've seen all 3, that's when we'll debrief.
But I would suggest writing
Taking
your
notes.
pros and cons and questions down in
Right
those
away.
in between moments.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a form that I'll share when we get to that point, really just identifying some of the key areas that we were thinking about as we were reviewing the proposals. It will allow you to do some kind of personal rating and reflection so that we can have that debriefing session.
Closer to the process that helped us pick you about.
Hey, if it works, don't fix it, you know? Any other thoughts, questions, comments about? Okay, I think we're done with strategy.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to old business, gender differences in ELA data.
Yes, so the board requested English Language Arts assessment data information disaggregated by gender. Our Department of Curriculum and Instruction has compiled that data and provided the board with a report. This evening, Katie Lee will give a brief summary of what she found, and thanks to the others who supported that deeper dive than I think we've done in the past. Katie will give kind of a summary overview, and then we would invite
data gathered and analyzed were 2 years of the NWEA MAP data. This is the 3rd year that we've been using that assessment, as well as 5 cohorts of the PARCC and IER data, and then special education eligibility data, just as your reference. So the summary of findings really fall pretty straightforward. The gender differences are notably significant in the PARCC and IER, with the girls consistently outperforming the girls each year. However, the differences between...
I'm sorry, Katie, did you say girls outperforming boys, or I thought you said girls outperforming girls, so I was...
Oh, did I? I'm so sorry.
No,
girls outperforming boys.
Thank you.
Consistently each year. And then, however, the differences in performance by gender is not as consistent in MAP. It varies. There are some years that I've noted that where boys were outperforming the girls in that assessment. One other piece of data that we shared were some comparable districts. They were both township and outside of the township that are very similar to ours. I just wanted to show you that the PARCC and IER data differences are pretty across the board. We have room for improvement for sure, but it is across the board. So what we would like to do is share with you that our improvement efforts around professional development for English language arts has been around instructional coaching and also helping teachers understand what the learning standards are and how to measure them. But notably, I would say we did not focus on gender-specific instructional approaches. That hasn't been our focus for quite many years. The other thing that we are really hoping to review and hoping that will contribute to the improvements would be the WIN, or the What I Need programming, as well as the results of the audit. We feel that that will really provide us some really significant information just to address the needs of all our learners, boys and girls. But our next steps, because this is an in-district assessment that we use and also a statewide assessment, we'd like to explore more into the classroom performance assessments, dig into some other data that we have access to, for example, grades or how the students are progressing on the standards. We need to also work with our teacher teams a little bit more specifically and helping them with any benchmarks of progress, if you will, and see if there's any differences there that we can address. So we will continue this work, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer, or we'll wait till the next meeting to address them.
I was just going to ask if, and you may have covered this, but I just sort of missed it.
Sure.
Have you shared that this is a question that we've asked and that you, like I just imagine as a former teacher, this being a really interesting faculty meeting and just looking at this for them as well as
I think that's what we would like to do in next steps. No, we have not gone to the teachers with this data. This was done for you and for your review. So next steps would be, hey, let's talk about classroom performance. Do you see any marked differences? And then also share this information, how the MAP results are varying. However, IER is really showing us something different. Let's talk about that.
We would like to pursue those meetings before we follow up again with them.
Lisa?
Just one piece of data that I don't have the report in front of me, but I just remember looking at the IEP data and the difference. That was super stark. And as you explore, I'll be interested to hear kind of what your thoughts are around that.
Kristen's helping a lot with that part.
I just had a follow-up on that. You mentioned a lot of the gender differences are seen across the state in other districts for the PARCC and IAR. Is that true of the IEP stuff too? And I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty consistent.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mary.
In the NWEA map, it says Met Growth Target fall to spring.
Yes.
Do they take it twice a year or 3 times a year?
3 times a year, but we set our growth targets for fall to spring. You can set those growth targets however. We could choose fall to fall, spring to spring.
Someday when we're discussing this, I think that would be an interesting discussion too.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
So we are over, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna just encourage us to table this, cause
Yeah.
it does sound like there's
Well, I
gonna be
think
more.
we're good, right? Anybody else have questions?
Yep, good.
Oh, I'm sorry, this isn't strategy.
No, but that's all right.
Just to follow, you mentioned they have some follow-up meetings outside of the special business committee. I'd like to.
What's your part of that, Frank? Okay. Would anyone else like to join Frank in that discussion?
Why are you looking at me?
Oh, I scanned the whole crowd.
We
I just
won't-
received my glaring.
I would be happy.
The gender.
About the gender differences in ELA, we're going to have a follow-up meeting after Katie meets with some teachers, with the teachers and kind of review some of this further, more in depth. We want to follow up with 1 or 2 board members before bringing it back to the committee of the whole. Frank has volunteered.
I will volunteer too,
He's
but I don't wanna
voluntold.
take a different, anybody else's spot.
You've been
So,
voluntold.
I've been voluntold. I'm happy to.
And just
yeah.
one real quick, if it's possible, getting some data on placement and Nutrier, you know, we're looking at what are the ramifications, I mean, whether this is just an anomaly or it's a testing issue or, you know, it gets balanced out and who cares, but
Various
one
leveling
data
and how
point
general.
of where it might come into play would be how placements are in Nutrier.
That's a good deal. Let's see if we can get that information from Nutrier. Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna move us
Yep.
to superintendent evaluation. So, just to remind everybody,
That's right.
Amy went ahead and did a mock-up of an evaluation. She worked very hard on it, thank you. We sent it around for board member feedback. I'm gonna do last call for comments to the evaluation, and then what will happen is Amy will make any necessary changes based on tonight. And then what I'm proposing we do is use that evaluation as our trial year, and then we'll reflect on it afterwards. Are there any changes that still need to be made? Ellen?
I have a whole the whole document, like, that I went through and spent hours on and marked up that I'm sending to her today.
Today, okay.
Yeah, so I just,
Jen?
I have 2 comments. I think, thank you. It's really
Yeah.
hard. So,
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
and I think I think there's too much, conceptually too much there. You know, and I find that if there's
I don't disagree.
so many things, then nothing's important. That's kind of the school of thought I'm with here. So and I think there's definitely items that I think are really important that I would highlight and say, oh yeah, that should be in. So that's 1, and then 2 is I think we need to be. I know it's in there, but more explicit about the financial business management aspects of what we expect, because we expect a lot. So we might as well stick it up in the top.
Okay,
But
so
I'll
I'm
write
gonna-
you notes, or
Yeah,
you,
let's,
or
so I'm just gonna say we need to finish this because it's already February.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
been out there for a while,
right.
right? So how are we gonna get it done? You'll submit.
So, I mean, in general, I just wanna say, first of all, thank you, and the reason I spent so much time on it was cause Amy put so much effort into it, and it deserved equal effort in editing. In general, my edits were, I agree with John, I felt that there was, the fiscal oversight and responsibility was missing, so I put it, I thought, where it belonged. And then, you know, in general, things about, I think, how it was phrased and written. I think in general, it needs to be active instead of just, phrases, because we are basing it based on what you're doing. So everything should be active, like promotes and, you know, ensures, and so that kind of, the flavor of it should be, you know, what are you doing? And I did add in where I felt that there were things missing, and I also got rid of things I felt were not as, either were redundant, because there was stuff that was redundant, or I combined them, and yeah. So I think once Amy sees this and it's combined, we're gonna have something that's pretty
So can I
Just
make
to
a comment?
summarize, this was meant as a one-year stopgap because we have no job description.
Yeah.
So this is based solely on the Illinois professional standards. So I don't wanna spend, I guess it's just a difference of how we wanna go about it.
Can I make a concrete suggestion?
Yes.
Because Lisa asked how we go forward and we're over time. I would ask Ellen to send her things
Yep.
to Amy. I would ask Amy, given the comments
Yep.
and et cetera, to revise it with input from
Yes.
Lisa, and then you guys final. You guys have my personal vote of confidence to get to whatever needs to be got to. And then I would say, I wonder if we should schedule some time in June or August or whatever the right time is, and really have a dedicated session. We could do it in executive session if it's, discussing specific personnel. And,
Yeah.
have a real, hash it out, what are we gonna get to for next year? That's my concrete suggestion.
Frank?
Yeah, first off, I agree that a lot of work, and thank you very much, so we didn't have to do all this. And I think for tonight, that this is totally appropriate. I think directionally, we need to get some more specifics in. There's a lot of directional, made progress toward type of things, and it would be nice when we get together if we start thinking about how to put some numeration around those things. I mean, at least some kind of guidelines of with some specificity instead of directionally things got better, which is important. But for this year, that's not a comment. That's why I didn't send anything before.
John?
Well, and we will have criteria because we'll have a strategic plan.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thanks.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate what I heard so that we all come to an agreement. Ellen is sending Amy her feedback. John, if you have any additional feedback.
I know John.
Okay.
Yep.
Go get to her.
Yep.
Amy, how long do you think you'll need to turn it around?
It depends. I don't know, but I'll do it as quickly as I can. Days.
Perfect.
I think. I don't know. I haven't seen what Ellen has done.
It's in a word.
Okay,
it's
so here's what
Okay.
I'd like to have happen. That it gets routed around for final review, and that we all give it the nod by the next board meeting. It doesn't have to be at the board meeting, but I'm gonna have Carrie send it around for your final approval, understanding perfection is not the goal.
Not required.
So when
Okay.
do you need
Stop,
it
yeah.
to be able to do that?
So
Tomorrow?
anything tomorrow, yes, tomorrow, great. No, the Thursday before the board meeting is when I send
Isn't
out
our board meeting
information,
Monday?
so.
No, it's
Two
President's Day,
weeks.
we have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh!
2 weeks.
Okay.
Amy's
Okay.
like,
Okay.
So I would
forgot.
need it no later than Thursday to include in the packet. Any later than that, I would be sending it
We're
under
good.
separate
It's
copy.
been a week and a half.
Yes, we're good.
Okay.
I was thinking
Yeah.
this week.
Okay,
Good.
Luxuriating.
Yeah.
great.
Huge
All right,
amount of
new business.
time.
Good job, everybody.
I wouldn't dare. Yeah.
It is time for public comments. Are there any audience members that would like to speak at this time? No? Okay.
Thankfully.
We seek a motion to adjourn to executive.
You can just say, take a motion. You can read it, or you can read it.
I seek a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I move to adjourn the executive session to discuss collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Well, second. I'll second
Oh.
it.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't want us to, I'm still gonna second it.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get us to, Yes.
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 Yes.